And Heidi Mancini.
And you are listening to the From Grief to Relief show. We are heard live on VegasAllNetRadio.com every Thursday at 3 p.m. You can buy the From Grief to Relief book on Amazon.com. So this week, the title of our show is Positive Psychology. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to be talking about is the unhappy truth about this whole happiness movement.
Okay.
And you agree with this, right?
I agree with it, yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about it a lot this week. So we want to talk about, so we want to talk about the pursuit of happiness and if that's actually a good thing or not. What do you think?
I think so, in a way.
Well, because I'm thinking also that is it important that happiness is the goal, or is happiness just a byproduct of a life well lived?
It's a byproduct of a life well lived.
Oh, so you agree with me then?
I agree with you, Joe.
All right. So
I just like to bust you a little bit.
All right, so we'll be talking about that as we go along. So this is the newest fad in mental health right now. It's called positive psychology. And the reason why it's so popular right now is because what they're doing is basically they're throwing out all the negatives. So they don't want to talk to people about their dysfunctions or any of the problems that they have. So they're just going to talk about it from the nice point of view. They're going to talk to them about how the good things that they do.
Right.
Which sounds fine.
Yes.
Except the fact that there's a lot of inner demons that people have to deal with.
Yeah, I think if they could do the positive with the negatives together, it would be effective.
Right, so we're going to discuss that because positive psychology in and of itself does not speak about any negatives. So we're going to throw in a little bit of both. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of that. And we also want to discuss the term post-traumatic stress syndrome and how it affects positive psychology, because that was the precursor to it. And we also want to tie all that in with the music and style of the 80s, if you can believe that. We can put all that together.
Yes, we went. Where did we go this past weekend, Joe?
Yeah, but do you think it's possible we can tie all that stuff in?
I think so. Where did we go this weekend?
Well, it was the Palazzo, wasn't it?
We went to the Palazzo to see Rock of Ages, and it was based on the 80s, which is from our generation. It was really fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it reminded me of, well, let's put it this way. In 1983, I graduated high school. I was 18.
So did I. I was 17, though.
So that whole thing, I was right in the middle of all that. So seeing this show again with the music, the clothes.
The clothes, the hair.
The hair.
The big old hair.
So it reminded me of, well, you're going to have to turn that down.
I'm sorry. So I must be hitting the wrong. Oh, I am. Here, mine's right here. Sorry, Joe. Everybody, I can't hear, so I'm just turning it up.
All right, I'm back.
Okay.
That was so loud. Anyway, all right, so the show, because it featured music and clothes of the 80s, I was remembering all this stuff. So I was thinking about the 80s, okay? Now, all of the styles and everything, including the hair, which I had hair down to my waist back then, too.
I heard. I never saw you that way, but girls told me.
Does
he still have his long hair? No.
Well, you flip your head upside down, and you spray it, and then you flip your head back, and you get the big hair. So I had that.
Did you have a mullet? Did you have the short sides and the short top and the long back?
Eventually.
Yes, you did.
Well, I didn't call it that.
Everybody did.
I called it the Dances with Wolves style. I had
my
that long.
God.
It's more like the one length long thing that I had to tie back into a ponytail when I trained people. But yeah, everything was crazy then. It was very excessive. The hair, even guys wearing spandex to the gym. You know, that was kind of weird. You were
they would
allowed
be
to wear
considered
leather.
gay today if they did that.
Well, yeah, but people are also out of shape these days. You know, so I don't even know if that would come back in. But the girls, though, too, their hair was big.
Yeah.
They had crazy makeup. The clothes were crazy. Very colorful. It was fun. You're talking about even, you had the heavy metal stuff where the guys looked like girls. But you also had Madonna in all that mix.
Debbie Gibson.
So everything was kind of pretty,
Janet Jackson.
Sexuality was pretty open. So I liked all that, let's just say. And let's talk about the thing that people don't usually want to talk about the 80s. Steroids were also in. You know, whether you look at it from the musicians were jacked up.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
You know, I saw an interview with Bon Jovi, and he said his drug of choice was testosterone. So, you know, so you had him, even Milli Vanilli, who couldn't sing, they were jacked up.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody had a look, even the actors, if you want to call them that, Arnold, Jean-Claude.
Yeah, it's true.
Dolph Lundgren, right? Mm-hmm. All these guys were huge. And as a young kid, about 18 or so, in the early 80s, I was a little intimidated, because everything was larger than life.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm getting to here is that all this was in the face of very harsh circumstances when you think about it. Because I look around now, and I notice that kids today, number one, they're not happy.
No, they're all got that snarl on their face.
Yeah, they're not happy. They're out of shape. They seem pretty lifeless. They don't have a lot of direction in their life. And life now is really easy compared to then. Now, I know what you might be thinking, like, how could you compare that? This is how I have it compared to. Right now, we have our whole country falling apart, basically financially, because of terrorism, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
But terrorism always existed. It's nothing new.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of a wash. That always existed. But here's something. Back in the 80s, we had to deal with Russia, a big, massive country that was just as dangerous as we were.
Right.
I mean, we had to deal with nuclear annihilation. Right now, we have to deal with, with all due respect, when the towers came down in 2001, it was done by a bunch of people with box cutters. And at the time, Al-Qaeda had about 500 members. Mm-hmm. Now, let's put this into perspective. Our country's fallen apart based upon, over 10 years ago, there was 500 members of Al-Qaeda.
Okay.
There's like 6,000 members just of Gold's Gym on Lake Mead in Buffalo. Okay? No, I mean, just to show you the difference of what we're crying and complaining about. And kids today are so sad, looking over their shoulder like, ooh, we're in danger all the time.
Right.
You're not in danger all the time. You got to worry about yourself.
True.
They're ruining themselves. There's more kids on drugs and antidepressants and everything else these days.
Well,
you don't have to worry about that.
I think they're that way, too, because they're desensitized from everything, Joe, because they're exposed to so much, too, which I think is a difference between the 80s and today, too, with our kids. Because they're exposed to so much between the social media and the TV and the news and anything. They know more at I don't know, 9 or 10 years old than I kind of knew when I was like 20.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they have more access to things. But I was also going to say this, too. When I was a kid, if I needed to do a report or a project, it was an all-day affair,
Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah. I had to, pack a lunch, go to the library. It would take all day. And then you go there to study one thing, and hopefully you get it, and then you come back home and you go, oh, there's still some more I needed to know to do my report. So then you got to waste a whole nother day. Now you can go online at any time you want. You go online from your phone.
Exactly.
So you can be the smartest person on the face of the planet if you just had the desire to do so.
Yeah.
So
true.
I actually think the internet's a positive, not a negative. Although I think you're right, though, they are being introduced to things at an early age. But here's the other thing, too. Being sexual was obviously it's big in every generation, but in the 80s it was out there. With the leather pants, the spandex, the outrageous hair, the makeup, we got all that. It was all in the music, too. But look at what they were facing in the 80s. They were facing AIDS, straight up. And how did we didn't cry and complain about it. How did we face it? We looked at it, thought, okay, there's a problem. We got glow-in-the-dark condoms and went at it and had some more fun and moved on. We didn't cry and complain. That's kind of the way it is. I'm not saying AIDS is not a problem now.
Right.
But we definitely, at least we know what it is.
But don't you think AIDS shut down, like, sexuality a lot, the openness? Because our culture is really, like, closed. Nobody wants to talk about sex and things that happen that are normal. So I think in the 80s, I think in the 70s, there was this thing, open sex, open whatever, and then the 80s came and it was still very sexual, but then I think the AIDS is what scared everybody quiet again.
I think it did, but I don't think everybody was crying and complaining about it.
No.
Like now, and I don't think everybody was angry. I think if anything, they were angry at maybe the government because they never even used the word AIDS, throughout the 80s. It was like a thing that was hidden in our government. And that's the other thing, too. I don't want to make it political, but look at the time frame, too. In the 80s, we had Reagan and Bush, who, it's not a political statement, but they were definitely out of touch with your average person. They were old, and we didn't have anybody that was in our generation, so to speak. You know, it was like those presidents were somebody that was out there. You know, there was no connection. We didn't know Kennedy. He was dead before, you know, like when I was 2 years old. You know, we didn't know that somebody could be a fairly young president until Bill Clinton. But that was the 90s. But even so, today, people are just so angry, hateful. I would use polarized as another one. You know, back in the day in the 80s, the Republicans and Democrats worked together.
Right.
Now, it's like everybody hates each other. And as I look at the kids, where is their expression?
But this is the thing I think of. I'm thinking about this. When you said that before, the negative part is there's a lot of stuff on social media and on the news and on the TVs. I don't care. You know, one of the reasons I hate to watch TV 90% of the time is because it's always negative. And when we talked about the positive psychology angle of things, I think the reason that they're starting to take off in that direction and the reason that people are so angry is because people are being fed so much crap that you know, it brings them down. You know, how often do you hear about the good things that people are doing? There's a lot of goodness out there and a lot of people that are doing things every day, but we never hear it. We hear about all the stupid reality shows that are on TV. I think that's another thing that's, it's like a dummy down mentality. It's like who, you know, I don't get it.
Well, I think they sensationalize the bad all the time to get ratings. You know, I think you're right, which is going to go into our theme of positive psychology. I think when there's that much negative out there and people like you that can see it in the media.
Overkill. It's overkill with the negative, but it's also overkill with the positive psychology. The negativity is so bad right now and people's attitudes and the hating with, you know, hating gay people, hating black people, white people, you know, poor people, whatever it is. And I think a lot of it's due to, I mean, I don't want to bring politics into this, but I think a lot of it's due to the climate in our government. They set the example, and look at what they're doing. They can't seem to get it together. And
well, to take it off the politics, I would say, too, the government and the politics, all they are is just a mass group of people. So if we knock it down to the individual, we can come down to what we have with the child being raised by a parent. And I think a lot of this comes down to parents are not raising their kids. You know, what they're doing is that they only give them the positives. Right. They're not correcting them. They're, what do you call it, like helicopter parenting them. They're watching everything they do. They're afraid to go outside. They're afraid to let their kids go outside. So these kids are, they're like being raised like veal. Okay, but the other part of that, not being able to go outside and everything, the problem with our society has changed over the years because you can't let your kids outside anymore because there's so many perverts, pedophiles, and all these other people running around that I know when I was raising my daughter when I was younger, and you could attest to this too, I remember playing outside. You know, you had to come in when it started to get dark, and I mean, I was like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, however old I was. I would never have let my daughter out on, I mean, she was, a teenager, and I still was like, I don't want you outside. I don't want you walking the streets because, again, I think our society's changed, that there's a lot of things that started to happen that scared parents, too, to being overprotective, right. I guess. Well, that would be the common collective consciousness. That's true. But why we're getting that is for the reason you said before, is that there's a 24-hour news cycle and they're putting out all the bad stuff. In reality, if you follow the numbers on it, it's a nice story, but it doesn't pan out. The amount of bad things that are happening to children these days in crime, it's actually down. So that's not true. But they show you the negative on TV, so all these parents saying that they're afraid to have their kids play in the park and stuff like that, these things are not true. You know, plus way back when, the parents would be in the park with the kid anyway. You know what I'm saying? True. So they're not allowing, you know, it also comes down to some laziness, too. To not allow your kid to go and play out in the street anymore and play a little, you know, tag, two-hand touch football. And they're going to blame that on some, you know, criminal that they saw on TV. I mean, I get it. I understand it. But the numbers don't back up the actual truth. And so what they're doing is they're kind of raising veal where the kids are afraid to go outside themselves. So, and when you don't develop a self, you don't develop any self-esteem. And when you have no self-esteem, you're continuously looking for outside sources to validate you. And when that happens, you never become a human being. Right. Fully. So, and you can't have relationships, so it kind of goes down. So you're definitely going to be more open to people who are polarizing in their speech. So if you hear hate speech on the radio, you might grab to it. Instead of being able to sit there and go, you know, I like part of what that person says, but the other part's not so true for me.
Right.
You know, unless you have a self, you're not going to be able to decipher it. So we're kind of answering the question of why people are so polarized today. And part of it is because they never have a self to begin with, so they latch on to the last statement that they heard. You know, if you listen to the same radio station every day and you hear some person speak, typically that personality is going to be yours. If you don't have a self-esteem, you're going to buy into it. You know, so I think that's what happens a lot. So what we have here is the polarization, I think. And so that's why something like positive psychology, you know, will find its way in the back door.
Right.
To say, okay, your life is so bad. Your life is terrible. You hear all these negative things on TV and the radio, and all your friends are sad, and there's, you know, the music out there is not very hip anymore. No one's out there wearing really great clothes. Fashion is kind of dead, but we're going to walk in there and tell you how good you are. So it's perfect.
Right.
You know, and I know you're a big fan of Facebook. When you see Facebook, when you see all these people putting these positive, inspirational quotes every day, you know, I mean, you like it, right? Of course.
I post them all the time. I blow up a Facebook page every single morning with all my inspirational stuff to people, you know, to make them feel better, start their day out with some positive stuff. And, you know, that's my responsibility and what I do to help. And it helps me, too. It helps me feel good because I read it and I said, you know what, that's true. So let's have a nice day. You know, but the other part of it is you have to try to live what you're throwing out there to everybody. And so maybe the other part of it is that well, you mentioned this to me the other day, is that there seems to be a trend now where people are putting up a lot of positive stuff all the time now, where before I hardly ever saw things on Facebook like that. Now all of a sudden it's like everybody's got something, you know, glossy to say.
Right.
And it's okay.
No, it's a good thing, and I'm not putting you down for it.
You're stealing my stuff, Joe.
No, but no, listen, your heart's in the right place. It is, and I like when you do it. Even our show is positive, but our show also, look at how we titled the show. We put the word grief right up front to make it real. You know, it's not all happy, joy. Actually, happiness typically for people is when they overcome adversity. And that's where the problem becomes, when you have these parents telling these kids how great they are and expecting them to be happy when they've never overcome anything. And if you never criticize them and you never correct them, they grow up into this world and they're going to go to work one day. And their boss is going to say, you're doing this wrong, and they are going to fall apart.
Right.
Because they've never been criticized before. They've never been taken down a notch. They've never had to go, wow, okay, I need to get better. And then they need to do some soul searching, look at their mistakes, and make them better. They haven't gone through any of that. So they grow up with no self-esteem.
Yeah, but the thing is you got a lot of adults that, you know, we're talking about the generation of kids now, but honestly, there's a lot of adults that are my age group, in their 30s, 40s, and they are really dysfunctional. I mean, it's amazing to me that I'll get people in their 30s and 40s come up to me and say, you know, what do you think about this, or what would you do? And they're like basic things. I mean, I don't want to solve people's problems because I'm not a counselor or anything. But that always amazes me that even our generation, you know, we talk about the kids, these young kids that are being this positive thing. But when I put the positive things on Facebook page, I do it so if somebody is in a funk or something's going wrong in their life, they may be able to look at that and go, okay, you know, and kind of give themselves a reality check. I don't think that those posts would make people be instantly happy, but I think it may help them to think about it, like just stop for a second and go, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean they're going to follow it, but even in our generation and older, there's a lot of people going around, they don't know what to do. They don't, you know, they can't figure it out in their 40s. How to get the balance.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's a good thing to put out positive messages. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's how this positive psychology sneaks in the back door and is the biggest thing in psychology since Freud, is because it's very hard to put down a psychology that speaks positive.
Okay, and the thing is, the positive psychology end of it, they go about it and everything is positive, and they don't point the negatives, right? I'm just trying to clarify this for people who are listening to this.
Well, yes, that's true. They never speak of the negatives.
Okay.
And just to give you an example, just to throw it out there.
Okay, but before you throw that out there, talk about the traditional therapy that we have today, which is cognitive and the negative, that you go in a therapist's office, and I can say this because I've been in counseling on and off for, times in my life. And a lot of the people I've gone to, they hit you with all the negative stuff first. So you're sitting in an office and you're already feeling bad about yourself because maybe, you have anger issues or you have this going on. And then the first thing they say to you is they reaffirm that badness to you with more negatives. And then you feel like, God, I'm really a loser, where, there's therapists out there. I know there's therapists out there that do both. And I think that's the point, is to have a balance of the positives and negatives.
But the point is that good therapy handles both.
Right.
What you do is with therapy, listen, you don't go to a therapy office because you're feeling good.
Right.
Right? That's not why you go. You go because you're in pain. So what a good therapist does is point out where the thorn may be, let's say.
Right.
And then you look at the thorn, and you have the courage to look at the thorn, and then you give the person, hopefully, a certain amount of self-awareness to understand how the thorn got there in the first place, and then how you may remove that thorn, and then how you may never put it back there again.
Right.
And so you heal your wound, and then you could move on and enjoy all the good things.
Right.
But that's what you do. But that's what positive psychology does not do.
Okay.
To give you an example of it, Stevie Ray Vaughan was probably one of the greatest guitar players in the history of music, right? Mm-hmm. He had an alcohol problem. He almost drank himself to death. But if he went to a positive psychologist, the positive psychologist would only talk about his brilliance as a musician and say, listen, you have a lot of fans and you're well loved, and so go with that. Play more music. But that didn't help him.
Right.
That's because
it wasn't the core of the problem.
Right, and that's the problem. That's exactly what I'm getting at, is that the core of the problem is that he had problems with his father from a very young age. He never felt loved, and I don't want to get into all that now, but that's what a real therapist would do. Mm-hmm. They would compliment him on his brilliance, and obviously he changed the world with his guitar and his words and all that, and a good therapist would definitely mention that.
Right.
But he's not sitting in the therapist's office because he's a great musician. He's sitting there because he's in pain and he was an alcoholic. That's why. And actually, the term alcoholic is not a real one, by the way. That's not recognized in psychology. It's called alcohol dependent, which is a big difference. Because typically, again, with positive psychology, they have this thing when you keep telling somebody the positives without talking about the negatives and trying to help them.
It makes them bury the fact of the matter is, and I can relate to this, it helps you kind of shove everything farther down, because you never have to face it, because somebody's always saying to you, well, you're great at this, you're good at this, you're such a nice person, you're wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And basically what ends up happening is people do end up pushing the ugliness. They put it away to start with because they don't want to deal with it, because that's hard to deal with.
Right.
When you have pain in your life, so they stuff it down.
Right.
But it's like you always say, it does come out at some point or another in people's lives.
But that's where I see the correlation. Like the parents today and society today will have a kid in a contest, let's say, and everybody gets a trophy. Everybody gets a ribbon. Listen, I'm not trying to be mean, but you need to lose if you're not good. And then what happens is you deal with the disappointment, and then there's two really good things that could happen. You can go back and you can become better, and then get recognized for being better, which will really give you some self-esteem. Handing somebody a medal for coming in last place does not build self-esteem. That's the main thing that can happen out of that. The other thing that could happen is listen, we're all made differently, and we all have something great about us. Let's say you want to be a basketball player and you don't make the basketball team. Well, okay. So you're maybe not cut out for basketball, or maybe if you tried harder, you could be.
Right.
But either one, let's say you're not good enough to be on the team, but maybe you're the greatest poet the world has ever seen. Well, then put your work into doing something that you're good at. At least somebody will do that. Like, I was training this guy for a show, and I happened to be in the same show. I won one class, he won the other class. And he said, well, what happens when we compete against each other? And I said, well, at that point, you're the wrist and I'm the razor blade, and that's just the way it's got to be. I will win. And he said, well, that's mean. I said, no, I'm doing it from the love of my heart, because if I tell you where your weaknesses are, you're not going to believe me. At least you won't believe me as much as if I beat you straight up in front of a couple thousand people. Then you're going to understand where your weaknesses are. you'll have to acknowledge those weaknesses.
Right.
And at that point, you will do something about it, and then you will beat me next time.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't let you win. That doesn't teach you anything. So I think that's part of the problem in our society with these kids. Everybody's getting a trophy, and it doesn't work like that. Going back to the other part of what they talk about in positive psychology, it actually started from something called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is also what happens, too, when somebody has an alcohol problem. All right, these 12-step programs, and they go, okay, you are an alcoholic. And it's like, then they'll say, well, you are powerless to do anything about it. Well, there you go. It's learned helplessness. That's why they say, even if you never drink again, you're in recovery for the rest of your life and you're never cured. It's like, wow, that's a good program. So join my program and I will tell you, you'll never be cured. So that's learned helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
When you think that you're helpless with what you do and what you feel in life, and you buy into that, that's what this whole learned helplessness is all about. It's keeping people down. Mm-hmm. It's a very bad thing. An actual real therapist would say, why do you drink? Nobody is naturally born dependent upon an alcohol or a chemical to get through life.
Right.
It's why are they drinking in the first place? It's because they don't like the reality of their life as it is. Well, here's a thought. Change the reality of your life. Simple. It's not that simple, but at least the path is there. It's better than trying to say I'm helpless for the rest of my life. And the real hard thing about it, it's very, very difficult for people to face their inner demon.
Well, I was just going to point that out to you. If you say to somebody about just face it, and you do it with a negative, if you say to them, okay, here's your negative, and I'm going to give you another negative. And I think that's where the positive, where they would come back and affirm that person as the good qualities that they would have.
Right.
Of whatever, leadership or, I don't know.
A good therapist would point out the strengths of a person, but they would also point out that a person is not dependent upon alcohol as the disease. They're dependent upon alcohol because they're covering up for another problem that's deeper.
Okay. Yeah.
They need to have the courage to face that problem. And once they face that problem, they will eliminate the need to change their life. Listen, everybody's addicted. Everybody. You're either addicted to things that are self-destructive, or you're addicted to things that are self-improving. Which one do you want? You can just as easily be addicted to protein shakes and addicted to eating, broiled chicken and vegetables because you're looking for a result. You could be addicted to drinking water if you think it cleanses you so much that it gives you perfect skin. If perfect skin is your ideal, that's what you want, well, then you'll be addicted to water. You could be addicted to making your boyfriend the happiest guy in the world.
Oh, that would be,
if that was important to you, because that would, in a sense, help you. Now, wouldn't it? Right? But I'm saying, now,
how about being addicted to helping your girlfriend or your wife?
That too,
right?
That too. But look at it this way,
right, Irma?
If I said I was,
they're smiling.
If I said I was addicted to alcohol, that means I'm telling you that I don't like my reality, and I'm with you. So, what does that mean? That
means you don't like me.
Well, it means that the inner demon in me is so big that I'm willing to crush that demon to crush you at the same time. So, for me to go to a program, and believe me, I'm not an alcoholic here, but I'm just saying, if I was handling it by going and saying that I have this problem for the rest of my life, that's not true. That's because those people were kind of put into this learned helplessness type of thing, where if they have a thorn stuck in them and it hurts, they leave it there for the rest of their life. If the thorn is in their shoe, they try to learn how to limp comfortably instead of pulling the thorn out and walking comfortably or running. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good analogy.
Yeah? Well, I just thought of that as we're talking. So really, all of this stuff comes down to accountability. You have to be accountable. And if you're a parent, you have to give your children accountability.
Right.
You have to tell them. You have to instruct them. Tell them when they're wrong. Let them be wrong.
True.
In order for them to develop some kind of self-esteem. So how does this apply with 80s music? It's because a lot of the music back then, although it spoke about being happy and having fun and all these types of things, it still was born out of some really harsh times.
True, yeah.
You know, and that's the point. Music today is born out of almost nothing. There is no backbone to it, so you don't hear great musicians. Mm-hmm. Actually, the music in the 80s, too, those guitar players were playing for years. They had to know scales, chords, modes, everything. They were great. As a matter of fact, I got Yngwie Malmsteen in the background here. He's a great guitar player, classical, everything. Here you're listening to him. He's playing with an 80-piece, I think it's a Japan Philharmonic. Can we turn that up just for a second? All right, that's good. You get my point. That guy was flat out brilliant. And you know what? He didn't play like as perfect as he does by his parents saying, you're really, really good at what you're doing. I mean, he practiced for 12 to 14 hours a day in front of a mirror. Mm-hmm. These are the things I read about him. Going by today's standards, if you can read a Dr. Seuss book and put a beat behind it, you think you're the new rap star. And they actually think that that's music. Oh am I right or wrong?
That's true. That is true. You're absolutely right.
I don't know your name, but we have a, what do you call it, an intern? You want to jump on there and vouch for me?
You're absolutely right.
All right, perfect. You agree with me. I mean, you've heard music today, right?
I sure have.
All right, so who influences these new people today? Because there were no great musicians in the 90s, so who can they look up to be any better?
Well, you know, in the 90s, you were talking about the 80s and the glam and, of course, the pop music and everything there. And then you went into the 90s and you went into what they called the grunge sound, the Seattle sound.
Absolutely.
And we lost a great musician in Kurt Cobain. And what a waste. But you're absolutely right. If you could pick up nowadays rap music and hip-hop music is not my forte, and I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but you're right. If you could pick up a Dr. Seuss book and put a rhythm drum machine to it, you could have the next hit wonder in the world. And there's no content to it at all.
Right.
None.
And you didn't have to study B.B. King's, scales or blues progressions for the last 20 years to be able to learn how to do that.
You were talking about great guitar players. Look at the legendary Roy Clark.
Oh, absolutely. He's another one.
I mean, a guy that scales and, unbelievable.
Thanks.
Do you know who Roy Clark is? I know, I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, who's Roy Clark? Okay, I know who he is now. Was he on Hee Haw?
Yes. Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah, he was a great guitar player, too.
Did you ever watch Hee Haw, Irma? Oh, my God, that was a good show.
So the point is, the musicians... The musicians today are not even musicians because they're not looking up to anybody. And they have parents that sit there and they just tell them how good they are all the time. Mm-hmm.
True.
It's like they're not making them practice at anything. Look at, I don't care, Elton John, Billy Joel. These guys have practiced for years playing the piano. How many people today play the piano? They don't. They sit out with their friends and they do a couple little rhymes and they all think that they're geniuses. Mm-hmm. And then their parents tell them how good they are, how they should be winning American Idol. Which is another ripoff, too, by the way, because instead of slaving for years in the club circuits trying to craft their expertise, they just go up on a show, put on some makeup, and they get on TV, and all of a sudden they're stars. And then they don't write their own music
besides
that.
That's going to be hard for a lot of the musicians, the local musicians here that we've seen that are really, really good, and nobody knows them.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been musicians their whole life, and they're awesome. They've got great singing voices. They're good musicians, and they go to the local clubs around here and they play. And here's this kid that's 16 years old, goes on American Idol, and you're the greatest.
Yep, that's what happens these days. And my new friend over here did mention, I was going to say about grunge music. What grunge to me was an absolute punch in the face to the glam scene, because the reason why glam fell apart was not because the musicians weren't good. It's because a lot of what they were talking about, all their lyrics were very much just about partying and having a good time. Mm-hmm. It was very flimsy. So the foundation kind of just broke on itself.
Right.
So grunge came along, and it was very moody and a little more intellectual, a little more from the emotions, and that brought that rock and roll, even from the 60s kind of thing. They call Pearl Jam a grunge band, but I'm telling you, I'm the biggest Who fan in the world, and I hear a ton of the Who in Pearl Jam's music, and I related to that too. So that's what I'm trying to weave this music thing through positive psychology to say it's the same thing. Positive psychology eventually is going to fall and collapse on itself because it has no foundation. There's no getting over any adversity. There's it doesn't deal with the negatives. It just deals with the fluff and the sugar and the candy for the masses.
Right.
You know, and that's where I see the problem. So we're going to take a little break. I want to play a clip here. I really want you to hear this. So if you're listening to this on the archives, do not fast forward. We spent a lot of time trying to find this stuff. So this was brought to my attention by my friend Gene Lithgow, and this perfectly sums up the way children are raised today compared to other generations, and why these kids seem so lost and unhappy, and why these people might be drawn into and accepting learned helplessness. So here you go. This is called If You Grew Up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s, then be grateful.
I can't believe we made it. According to today's regulators and bureaucrats, those of us who were kids in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or even early 80s probably should not have survived. Our baby cribs were covered with bright-colored lead-based paint. We had no child-proof lids or locks on medicine bottles, doors, or cabinets. And when we rode our bikes, we had no helmets. We drank water from the garden hose and not from a bottle. We ate cupcakes, bread, and butter, and drank soda with lots of sugar in it. But we were rarely overweight because we were always outside playing. We would leave home in the morning and play all day, as long as we were back when the street lights came on. No one was able to reach us all day. Smartphones? We didn't have cell phones at all. No PlayStations, Xboxes, limitless channels on cable, laptops, or tablets. Facebook was an actual face and an actual book. We had friends. We went outside and found them. We played dodgeball, and sometimes the ball would hurt. We fell out of trees, got cut, and broke bones and teeth. And there were no lawsuits from these accidents. No one was to blame but us. Remember accidents? We had fights and punched each other and got black and blue and learned to get over it. We made up games with sticks and tennis balls. And although we were told it would happen, we didn't put out any eyes. We rode bikes or walked to a friend's home, knocked on the door, rang the bell, or just walked right in and talked to them. Little League had tryouts, and not everyone made the team. Those who didn't had to learn to deal with disappointment. Some students weren't as smart as others, so they failed a grade and were held back to repeat the same grade. Tests were not adjusted for any reason. Our actions were our own. Consequences were expected. The idea of parents bailing us out if we got in trouble in school or broke a law was unheard of. They actually sided with the school or the law. Imagine that. Now, this generation has produced some of the best risk-takers, problem-solvers, and inventors ever. We had freedom, failure, success, and responsibility, and we learned how to deal with it. If you've related to anything that was just said, you're one of them. Congratulations. You made it.
This is Joe Proney.
And Heidi Mancini.
And you're back listening to the From Grief to Relief show. I hope you listened to that. And going along with that clip, I want to thank my parents for allowing me to run, to play, to fall down, to break stuff, break myself, make mistakes, teach me how to say I'm sorry when I needed to and say thank you when I needed to. Also, I want to thank them for allowing me to think for myself and not to need others' approval, to feel good about myself, and also to teach me to be happy for other people's success. What do you think about that?
Mm-hmm. It's all true.
Yeah. Did we make our point?
I think so.
All right, so let's talk more about this positive psychology. It actually started with some studies that were based on post-traumatic stress disorder, if you can believe that. Now, the way the DSM works is that they're looking for dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
So what it does is, again, it calls it a disorder, which I don't actually like. Like, we're talking about trying to middle this to give you the positive and negative. If I was talking to a person that had post-traumatic stress disorder, and that could be from anything. It could be from a really bad relationship. You know, it could be from war. It could be from a lot of things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a disorder. I think a lot of these things are what the body does, what the mind does.
It's a protection mechanism sometimes.
Right, absolutely. It's a coping mechanism, so I understand that. So I would not call it a stress disorder. It sounds really negative. I would call it what they used to call it like 40, 50 years ago, and they called it warrior's heart.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if somebody came in, this person is, they have warrior's heart because they've been through some tough times, that would make you feel better, right? Mm-hmm. But then after that, we can also get in and get into the underlying stuff. Right. To pull out the thorns, so to speak. So post-traumatic stress disorder is anxiety, and you're unable to regulate your fear responses. Okay, you have bad dreams still, you have these thoughts all the time. But see, here's something that they don't tell you. What's even more common than the stress disorder, so to speak, is post-traumatic growth. And that's what this show is about. Being able to face the negative and then making a positive out of it. Here's some numbers for you. They say 61% of prisoners of war report psychological growth from their experience.
Okay.
Now, this is even crazier. They say the harsher the punishment equaled more positive change in their life.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Now, here's some more. 85% say trauma changed their life for the better. Now, what they do say is that they feel like it's extremely unfortunate, maybe that they lost a spouse or they even lost a body part, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. They didn't wish that to happen. But they do have to admit that going through that whole thing and facing their issues, they've become a stronger person because of it.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Now, the major thing you have to fight over that now is guilt. Because the guilt comes from society in general will try to tell you that you should not be a better person and should not be able to be so happy so fast.
Right.
After a very, very bad thing happens. And I've been through that myself. You almost have to fake how sad you are just to appease other people, because when you really do face your issues straight up, it's unbelievable how fast you can recover. Mm-hmm. And then you become even stronger than you were before, so you can become this beacon of help for other people. Mm-hmm. And people don't really understand that until you've been through it. So let me talk more about people being resilient. They've done a lot of studies, and believe it or not, they say 2 years after a catastrophic incident, you go back to feeling just about the same amount of happiness that you did before. So let's say you get into a really bad car accident, extremely bad. They say about 2 years after that or so, you're about to the level of happiness that you were before the car accident.
Huh. Okay.
Now, here's something that's even more interesting. They say if you win the lottery, all right, let's say you win $1 million. 2 years after that, your happiness goes away and you're back to the amount of happiness you were before. So what does that tell us? Probably can tell us a lot of things, but what it can tell us is that happiness never comes from the outside. It's never externally validated.
No, it's what you do on the inside that you put out there that's...
it's like these people that say, well, I will be happy when I find my really great partner. When I find this really great guy, when I find this really great girl, when I find this really great job, when I get a raise, when I hit the lottery, I'll be happy.
Right.
The fact is, none of that matters. It all comes from inside, so you have to be internally validated for yourself. Because everything, again, will come back to normal.
Right.
If I handed you a $100 bill right now, you would smile, right?
I'd be like, yeah. Joe.
At the end of the hour, you'd forget that I did it. That's just kind of the way people are, let's say I gave you 3 orgasms today, right?
I want 4 and 5 and 6.
Yeah, that's fine for now, but what happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow, you better have that game there.
It's going to be 11 o'clock at night.
It's going to be the same thing. I'll say, let's try for 6 or 7.
It'll be 11 o'clock at night. I got to get up at 4, and you're going to be bothering me.
I don't care.
And I could say, didn't I cash it in the night before? You'll say, no, I need more. That's just what people are. We need more.
I need more. It's like that commercial. That one commercial on TV with the little kid. It's like, we just need more. We need more. And the guy's sitting there at the banker, and he's looking at the kid, and he's like, what does he say?
I don't know, but you're right.
Funny.
It's just people
we just need more. This
little
6-year-old saying, we just need more. We just need more.
So the point is that the only person that's in your life for your whole life is you. So you got to be happy with who you are.
Right.
And stop looking for outside validation all the time.
Sure.
Yeah. And here's something, because I know you talked about it with your friends. And
what did I talk to my friends about?
Well, part of our issue today is we can't just always talk about the positive, right? We got to be able to talk about the negative. And in doing so, you're actually helping the person, right? So you got to talk about the negative. So, okay, let's say you have one of your friends that's a woman, right? Okay,
Most of my friends are women. I don't really have any guy friends.
Well, let's say, and she is married or not with a guy for a long time. Mm-hmm. And she says that she fakes orgasms. Is that true?
Yes, that's what she told me. I was like, really?
Now, you tell me that's the same thing in positive psychology. The fake orgasm shows the man that he's done something good for her to make her happy,
right,
to please her. But in fact, he did not. So who's being helped by this?
Nobody. Because now she's like, I said, well, you should tell him the truth, and you could have fun working on it. She goes, how am I going to tell him that after all these years?
But the point is, in terms of positive psychology, is you have to talk about the negative. You can say, I love you very much, and I care about you, but this right here, we need to do this, and I need this, and I need that in order to feel something.
Right.
So that's what I'm talking about. So what would the advice be then?
I think, the advice I said to her is I think that you should communicate and be honest with him and just say, we can have fun working on this. That's kind of what I said to her.
Right. So in terms of positive psychology, once again, it's learned helplessness. If you continue to tell somebody a lie so you're not hurting their feelings, it doesn't help anybody.
No.
Because people, when hearing a negative or being around a negative, can overcome it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? You got to give them the chance to overcome it, though.
But she said, what do I do if he gets mad? And I go, well,
then he's not the right guy.
I said, then you know what? I mean, he might be mad. I said, he might be mad because you've been kind of lying, but he'll get over it.
Yeah. Well, he'll...
Maybe.
If he cares enough, what he'll do is try to make it better.
Exactly.
So the idea is, the first studies here is that people are extremely resilient.
Yes.
Right? So studies show that there's about there's more, but I'll take the top 5 positive changes that people have when they go through extremely traumatic events. And here's number 5, increased spirituality. You know, some people find God or some kind of spirituality, which people find that as being a positive when they go through tough times. They also find that their relationships actually improve because they care more about the people that they're with.
Right.
And they take it more seriously, and every day counts kind of thing. They also have increased personal strength.
Yep.
Right? So you don't know how strong you are until somebody challenges you or life challenges you. Yep. And unfortunately, everybody's going to be challenged in life. So, so you have to start getting used to it. And that's been my point all along, is that a lot of these kids have never been challenged before. So now when they get older and they get challenged, they fall apart.
Right. They don't know how to cope.
No, they don't know how to cope at all. Like I was saying, in the 80s, we faced up a lot more tough things. And they got over it. So number 2, they've also found new possibilities for themselves.
Yes.
So possibilities such as, I don't know, like me, I went back to school.
Right.
You know, that was one thing I did. What else did I do? I wrote a book. You know, I don't want to talk about myself too much, but how have you improved, you know, when things got tough?
When things get tough for me, I just say, I'm a goal setter, so I just say, you know what, I'm going to set a goal and I'm going to concentrate on that for a while. Same thing like when you went back to school.
Well, give me one. Did you find that you got stronger when you got divorced?
Yeah, I did. I felt like when I went through a lot of that stuff, it made me a stronger person. And actually going through some of the stuff I've gone through with my daughter has made me, the stuff I've gone through with my daughter, I think has made me stronger than my divorce did, because she actually had, she has a lot more of my heart space there. So.
And you probably didn't think you were capable.
No, I didn't think I was capable of doing the tough love. I didn't think I was capable of, being able to stand by stand my ground with her. And so far,
And you went back to the gym?
And I went back to the gym, and I lost a
I
crap
shouldn't have
load
to
of
rattle them
weight,
off
and I
for you.
just started doing shows and, just kind of doing things that, I said, wow, I can't believe I got all this tenacity to be able to do all this. So, yeah, I actually found out at like 40-some years old that I have a lot more strength than I thought I had, too.
And how much weight did you lose when you went to the gym?
45 pounds and like 6 sizes in clothes, something like that.
And
what?
you used to smoke. Come on now.
Oh my God!
I'm like
I
pulling
used to smoke.
teeth
We
over
gotta
here.
tell
I'm not
everybody
a
I
dentist.
smoked cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes for
I'm a
like
radio-
20 years. So I quit smoking. I started training. I started eating right, and that's it. And I realized, wow, I could really set these goals and follow through. And it didn't matter what people said to me, because people would say, "You're going to go back to smoking." I'd say, "No, I'm not." "You're going to put all your weight back on." "No, I'm not." So I got something over here. Sometimes women don't say anything because they don't want to get called out either. Tit for tat. So I'm not sure. Oh, okay.
Call that.
Okay, they won't say anything because they're afraid you're going to come back and say you don't blow me enough, or you don't have sex enough, or whatever it is. Like a tit for tat. So sometimes women won't be honest because they're afraid the man might come back and say, well, you don't do this for me, as a defense mechanism.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then we're talking
So
communication skills. That's all.
Exactly, and I think it all comes down to communication. That's what I told my client this morning. I said, I think you guys there's something wrong with your communication. And I said, you need to be open and honest with him. I said, is it okay with you that you're faking it? Because if it's okay with that you're faking it, it's okay. She said no. I said, well, there you go. Then you need to tell him.
Right.
But I said, well, maybe you don't need to tell me you've been lying all this time either. Maybe you could just say some of the time.
But you always need to, listen, you always need to give people the chance to do the right thing.
Yes, exactly.
Or the wrong thing, if you want to take it from the negative side. But let me give you some words of wisdom from Nietzsche, or Nietzsche as his name is really said. He said, anyone who has ever built a heaven for themselves, they did so by first living in his or her own hell. Mm-hmm. Think about that for a second. It's important to have gone through some really bad stuff in order to appreciate the good stuff.
Exactly. Which
goes back to our 5 positive changes here, which is a lot more than that. But you do get a renewed appreciation for life, which will help you in every area. Whether it's, your relationships, the most important relationships with yourself.
Well, I appreciate you, Joe, even though I don't show you all the time. I do. I think you're awesome.
Well, thanks. More words of wisdom from Nietzsche. Happiness is the feeling that the power that you have is growing and that resistance is overcome. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you can also say it with courage, right? Like courage is not the absence of fear. It's having fear and anxiety and still being able to accomplish your goal, to still push forward and do your job. Mm-hmm. So that's courage. But Nietzsche, on the other hand, takes it a step further. And he says, that's not just courage. That's what I call happiness. Happiness is the ability to overcome all the problems. Okay. So that's what I'm getting at here through all of this. And we'll go over it more next week because I want to get more detail, because positive psychology actually has a lot of good things, because it deals with 24 character strengths that every human being should have, and I'm definitely into that. That's
we
important.
took the test, the two of us, and it was amazing, wasn't it? How close they got
to
our
great.
profile?
It was great. And it also talks about 6 major traits that people should have to be good people. And in the background here, we have some glam music. I'm glad we got that in. That's perfect. You know what? We got a few seconds. Turn that up for a second. All right, that part was perfect about nothing but a good time. That pretty much locks up the whole 90s in one sentence. And we're going to finish it with that. Nothing but a good time. My name is Joe Peroni.
And Heidi Mancini. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for listening to the From Grief to Relief show.
Views and opinions expressed on this program were those of the hosts and guests and did not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.